Sight of an order of service. I'm beginning it. The main thing is that it will flow as it is on the order of service. The only thing to say is that when we sing Amazing Grace, Amanda and Jodie are actually going to sing the first 4 verses, and we're invited to join in with the last 2. So I've only put solo for the first 2, but it's the first 4. Other than that, we'll follow the service, and when Pushpa's niece has spoken, we'll then have Somewhere Over the Rainbow played again, and that's a time for you to think and to leave as and when you wish. Thank you for coming. So if I can invite Dr. Varkey.
Thank you everybody for coming. We debated the last few days whether we should hold this or not, but I felt it would be therapeutic for many of us and for you, because many of you couldn't come to the funeral, and I felt we needed to do something so that we could move on. On the 23rd of May, we lost a dear friend and colleague. As Khalil Gibran said, "In the sweetness of friendship, let there be laughter and sharing of pleasures. For in the dew of little things does the heart find its morning and is refreshed." So let's spend the next hour, or whatever little time we have, remembering the laughter and the pleasures that we shared with Pushpa, so that we can carry on with those happy memories. Pushpa's been my best friend for the last 13 years. It sounds like little kids on the playground, isn't it? My best friend. But I didn't realize she was my best friend till she was gone. We've worked together these last 13 years. We laughed a lot together. I drew inspiration from her to cope with each day in the NHS. The numbers of people she shared a similar relationship with was obvious as I was putting together this service. She and I, we argued. She said we were discussing. We planned and organized the breast service. We set it up. Then we reorganized it when we saw the gaps. And then we reorganized it yet again. I think we did that nearly every month. We grumbled to each other. We railed at the futility of trying to run a streamlined service in the NHS. Never did a single patient slip through the net, not on Pushpa's watch. She went through that MDT meeting list with a fine-tooth comb each week. She would give me that look across the table if I hadn't been quite so thorough as her. I told her she was OCD. She told me I was just plain disorganized. I said, all your surgeons are a pain. She said, all you radiologists are a bigger pain in the butt. In between all of this, we swapped recipes. We compared the sizes of the tomatoes she grew with the pathetic ones that I produced. I said foliage plants are better. She said no, had to have bedding plants. She had to grow marigolds every year. Some of you might have seen the profusion of marigolds she had every year in her garden. I said, always sieve the flour twice before baking that cake. She said, get the butter out of the fridge first thing in the morning. I said, you can't do a wide local on that patient. She said, I'm making Chinese tonight, do you want to come over? She said, you got the size of that lesion wrong. And I said, can I have your recipe for kulfi? I said, wasn't George Clooney gorgeous in Up? She said, give me Robert Downey Jr. any day. We compared Hugh Jackman's specs with Salim Khan's specs. He, by the way, is a Bollywood hunk. She said that meeting was far too long. I said, shall we go to the Harrogate Flower Show? She was always impeccably turned out, always perfectly coordinated. She got a lot of ribbing from all of us for that. One day she wore red shoes to work. And I said to her, Pushpa, do you know what they say in Yorkshire about red shoes? I said, red shoes, no knickers. She threw all her red shoes out. We both tried to learn to speak Yorkshire phrases and slang. She never quite mastered the accent. The patients would see her and then come down the corridor to me and say, I've just seen your younger sister. And that used to get me really wound up. And I'd go stomping down and protest, and she'd just laugh. She'd laugh that beautiful laugh that she had. We said a lot of stuff to each other, but I never said, thank you for being a good friend. I never said, you keep me calm and sane. I never said, I wish I could be more like you. I never said, you know the patients adore you. I never said, you're a fantastic cook. I never said, thank you for being there for me. As they say in Yorkshire, I will see you when I see you, Pushpa.
Reading from the Bible, St. John chapter 14, verses 1 to 6. Jesus said, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am in the thousand winds that blow. I am in the softly falling snow. I am the gentle showers of rain. I am the fields of ripened grain. I am in the morning hush. I am in the grateful rush of the beautiful birds in the circling flight. I am the starshine of the night. I am in the flowers that bloom. I am in a quiet room. I am in the birds that sing. I am in each and everything. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I do not die.
Good afternoon, everybody. As some of you might know, my name is Richard, and I manage the endoscopy unit here in Rotherham. But in my previous job, I worked on B4 and B5, and it was there that I met Mr. Downey. My first impressions of her were of a very quiet and calm surgeon, not qualities you normally associate with most of the surgeons who work here. She would come to the ward, she would see her patients, and then pass on her instructions and leave. Obviously, as time passed and we got to know each other a little bit better, we became more familiar with each other and we would laugh and joke, and our interactions became more animated and jolly. But even then, Mr. Downey remained quiet and calm. And as Dr. Varkey said, she was always a lady. The very few times when I did see her angry, but not shouty, was when patient care was being compromised in some way. And this was because deep down inside, she always cared about her patients. It was the fact that she cared so much about her patients and the quality of the care that they experienced that made me respect her even more. For the people in the room who work in a hospital, which is probably most of you, the best way I can illustrate how good a surgeon, particularly a breast surgeon she was, is to tell you that she was one of the few surgeons who are picked by members of staff to perform their surgery and to be cared for by them. That was the kind of trust she engendered. And when Mr. Downey was your surgeon, she remained your surgeon for as long as you needed her. You might wonder why I keep referring to her as Mr. Downey rather than Pushpa. and I have to be honest and say I did always struggle to call a Pushpa to her face. This from a man who calls everybody love, flower and spadge. I think the reason was that I actually respected her as a surgeon, and I realised that she'd earned that privilege through hard work and diligence. I think I must be getting more conservative as I get older, either that or I am more aware of how hard people like Mr. Downey work to get to that level of skill. For all the care and devotion she showed her patients and her colleagues through the years, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Downey.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ghazala and I work in the surgical unit here. I must say that this has been incredibly difficult for me to come up and speak here because of the closeness of association I had with Pushpa. I have known her for a decade, in her professional life, in her personal life, and she was my friend, philosopher and guide, if not an older sister. I was asked to recite a few verses from the Holy Book, and again I found that very, very difficult because I could not put it in perspective. So I have gathered the courage to present a few verses from the Holy Scripture that describes the attributes of a good human being. And every slide that you will see, there are a few slides, you will see the similarity into that she was an embodiment of a truthful person, sincere person. She was humble, she was patient, she was forgiving, she was honest, she was good to others, she had a consideration for others, she was courageous, she was moderate, and she was cheerful. This is a verse from chapter 49 which says that we created you from a single soul and made you into nations and tribes. The most honored of you in God's sight is the greatest of you in piety. These are a collection of verses from different chapters, so they are not in order. But the point I'm trying to make is that she is, I believe, resting in a good place simply because of the good deeds that she gave and simply because of who she was. The pious and the virtuous. So what is pious and virtuous, and how is it described? It mentions that why say you what you do not? And grievously odious is it in the sight of God that you say which you do not? She was very, very true to her word, and all of us can testify to that every single thing she did, she made sure it happened. She said it made sure it happened. Fulfilling obligations. These are obligations that arise from our mutual obligations that we make in our dealings with people and our country. It's promises that we make to one another, commercial and social contracts. I cannot recall a single day in these 10 years when she did not fulfill her obligations. Stand out firmly for God and justice, even against yourself or your parents, because God is well acquainted with what you do. And be just, that is next to piety, and just she was. Spend out of the bounties that we have provided for you before the day when no bargaining will avail. She was very charitable and very helpful to the most needy and the poorest of the poor. Weigh with full justice. She did that. Enjoin what is just, forbid what is wrong, and bear with patient consistency, because this firmness of purpose in the conduct of affairs, in every step of her way, in every single thing that she did in her life, she demonstrated this. All these qualities of avoiding futility, being humble, and having no false pride, she bore all of them with great perfection. She spoke justly. She always said a word directed to the right. She would respect her trust, she would respect her covenant, and always stand firm. And she was moderate in her pace. even if she did not have the means to help, she would always turn back and give a word of easy kindness. That was something very, very special to her. And when she was greeted, she would always greet you well. She has told me a lot about her life with her family and her parents. And when her mother was old, she would make sure that she went and saw her flying thousands of miles to another continent to make sure that her mom was okay. This is a verse from chapter 23, which says, "Your Lord has ordered you to worship none except Him, to be good to your parents. If either or both of them attain old age, do not say to them, 'Fie on you,' or rebuke them, but speak to them with words of respect, and lower to them the wing of humbleness out of mercy, and say, 'My Lord, be merciful to them, as they raised me since I was little.'" I remember the affection she had for her mother, and the experience of when my own mother passed away, the support that she gave me, I can never forget her for that. She was nice to all her relatives, kept them in mind, and always had gifts for the oldest and the youngest of the family. She was moderate in spending. She was moderate in spending everything, including the tiniest suture in theatres. And if I wasted half a centimetre, I would get spank on my hand. I was sure to get that. She never said a bad word about anyone. I have never recalled her using any sarcastic word about any single individual. This is a chapter 31 where one of the prophets, Luqman, was talking to his son. He was talking about good deeds in this world. And he said, if there is the weight of a mustard seed and it was hidden in a rock or anywhere, God will bring it forth, because God understands the finest mysteries and is well acquainted with them. So what is the reward for good deeds? These are the ones who will be rewarded with the highest place in heaven because of their patient consistency. Therein they shall be met with salutations and peace, dwelling therein. How beautiful and an abode and a place of rest. I hope she rests in peace. Thank you.
I was Mr. Udani's secretary for the past 5 years, and it was an honour and a privilege to have known and worked with her for those years. She was a caring, loving lady who always put others first, and she will be very sadly missed by those who worked with her. And then we'll just read a little poem. A rose once grew where all could see, sheltered beside a garden wall, and as the days passed swiftly by, it spread its branches straight and tall. A crevice that has, one day a beam of light shone through, a crevice that had opened wide. The rose bent gently towards its warmth, then passed beyond to the other side. Now you who deeply feel its loss, be comforted. The rose blooms there, its beauty even greater now, nurtured by God's own loving care.
mortal life shall cease. I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Everybody. The last time I said a few words about Pushpool was at a retirement just a few months ago. So how sad now that we're talking about her, I'm talking about her again as a memorial service. I first met Pushpool when I was appointed as consultant in 1992, and she was already in the department working as a middle grade surgeon. Working for Mr. Jones and Mr. Haggy. I can see some people around here who perhaps knew those surgeons then. The other middle grade registrar in the department was Jimmy Coker. Now, given the fact that general surgeries in the 80s and 90s was fiercely competitive and mainly the domain of the British white male, it was no mean feat that Pushpool was working as a middle grade registrar in the department, given the fact that she was female and of Indian origin. And I think it showed, not only that she was very talented, but she was clearly determined and quite resilient in getting that far already in a surgical career. She worked in the department for 3 or 4 years. During that time, she tried to get a senior registrar job, but like so many at the time, she didn't quite progress to senior registrar. We recognised her qualities here in Rotherham, and she was one of the first surgeons to be appointed to a permanent grade position here in Rotherham as a staff grade surgeon. And I was on the committee that appointed her and Jimmy Coker to those positions around 94, 95. She then subsequently progressed to become an associate specialist after 4 or 5 years, and increasingly was becoming a very valued member of the breast service. Thereafter, she was appointed as locum consultant breast surgeon in the mid-90s, just after 2000, and then progressed to a substantive consultant. And when she retired last year, she put in 22 years service into HMS Rotherham. Her contribution was significant. She is conscientious, committed, caring, compassionate. Some would say that she was fussy. She was pernickety. Her attention to detail was legendary, particularly in the outpatients and in the MDT. But behind it all, it was all to do with patient care, and she wanted the best for her patients. I said at her retirement that she should be extremely proud of her personal achievements, and on behalf of the department, the hospital, and all the patients that she'd been treated, we thanked her. She also did a lot of work, not just in the department of general surgery, but she was a member of the LNC, and she represented the non-career gay doctors for a long time. She was also a key member of the BMA, and for 1 year, around 2003, she became chairman of the Rotherham BMA division. She also did work for international medical doctors. I didn't know push her particularly well outside Rotherham, outside professionally, but there are many here who know her better. But I was aware that she was planning to travel more. She's got a sister in Canada, and she was planning to travel more to India, and I heard that she was perhaps going to spend more time over there in the winter months. And I joked at her retirement do that, in fact, that we were all jealous of that, and that as she disembarked HMS Rotherham, which was beginning to flounder on the rocks, we were all jealous as she headed off into with lots to look forward to, into an EPR and Meditech free zone. Sadly, that wasn't to be. And ironically, having treated breast cancer patients for the last 10 years, she, shortly after retirement, was diagnosed herself, and unfortunately succumbed to the complications of treatment. She'll be sadly missed by many of her close relatives, family and friends, and many of us here. The department, the hospital, and the patients of Rotherham are indeed indebted to her service over the last 20 years.
I'm Carol Barris, manager of breast screening, and when I met Mr. Udarnik, we then held the breast MDTs at Doncaster Gate, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Haggie were the surgeons. And a couple of times she didn't turn up when I'd asked her, and then we realised she didn't drive. So Michelle, when she started, used to bring her down, or somebody else. And I think, like Richard said, she said, call me Pushpa, and I found that very difficult. So I said, well, do you mind if we call you Miss Dude? And she said, no, that'll be fine. But if you look in the dictionary at dude, it says a man. As Mr. Cooper has just said, she was in a man's world in the surgeons, but that didn't put her off. She was very headstrong and determined to do what she did. And the other writer put under dude is snappy dresser. Well, she was a snappy dresser. So it sorted her down to the ground. So when she left, and like Mr. Cooper just said, she liked the detail in, and at the MDT that Wednesday before she left, she said, oh, I don't like blanks. There was a blank where there should have been something written. So when she left then, I wrote this poem called Miss Dude. Our dearest consultant, who doesn't like blanks, is leaving us soon, so to express my thanks, during Wednesday's MDT, I wrote you this verse for Miss Dude, who always puts her patients first. At maths, you're the tops. At MPIs, you're a whiz. MBSS, Meditech, ICE, even Riz. We'll miss you in clinic, MDTs won't be the same. But it's time for a rest, for a hard-working day. Rest in peace.
Unfortunately, the next prayer song we can't have because the person who was going to sing is indisposed. It's okay, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. What I want to do is give you a little snapshot of the memories that I have from Mr. Udarnik. I'm sure a lot of them will ring a bell with you as well. I was deeply shocked and saddened to hear Pushpa Udarnik's passing. Thinking back, I can't remember a time when I didn't work with her, and thanks to Mr. Cooper, I now know I always did. In all those years, she never changed. She always paid great attention to details, and she hated waste. She always checked what equipment was available for her cases, and nothing would be opened and not used. She was a very much a no-nonsense kind of person, but she had an infectious laugh when something amused her. She was a regular cinema goer, and I could always rely on her telling me about a film I was thinking of seeing. She'd always seen it before me. I loved to hear about the holidays that she was planning and the places that she visited, and I hoped that her retirement would have been filled with many more such well-deserved trips. She would bake her wonderful marble cake for us from time to time, and that always went down well with us all.
Pushpa showed compassion to her patients and friendship to her colleagues. I will miss her.
Nothing I'll say is that you haven't heard or you don't know about Pushpa. If you know her as a professional and as a friend, like I did, she was an ultimate professional and a very endearing friend. I first met her in 2005 when I came here as a registrar. I would see our acquaintances were limited, just limited professionally, and I would see her standing outside the theatre with her arms folded around her, looking very angry, just to know that her patient hadn't been sent for. And when I joined as a locum consultant in November 2005, it was the first time that I became friends with her. She got me up to speed with the department, how it was run. She had a no-nonsense approach. She would tell you how to do things, and quite infuriating that she was always right. She would always tell you that whatever you do, there's a better way to do it. She was a very firm believer of principles. Principles that made her an excellent surgeon, an excellent doctor, and a person where you need to be in patient care. And it's those principles that she picked up fight with various people, and in the end got her way. She was a chair of RIDGE, which is International Doctors Group over here. Whether it was a tsunami or an earthquake, any part of the world, she would create the same effect in the hospital, galvanize and ensure that she organized the meetings, the collections, and delivered the charitable work. Personally, she was very supportive of people who she knew. Together with her husband, they were always ready to help whosoever went to seek, whether it was advice or help. Not only they were helping, but she was an excellent cook and a wonderful hostess. She was typical Southeast Asian hostess. She would ensure that if you went home, you wouldn't go out without a meal. She loved entertaining people. If she thought that there were fewer people that she were entertaining, she would ring around and get more people. Both Pushpa and Ahmed, her husband, they ensured that they themselves remained prim and proper and fattened their guests, both in joy and in body. Thank you.
I'm still in deep shock for the loss of my colleague, friend, and sister, Pushpa Dudani. Thank you. I've known Pushpa for more than 16 years. As a surgeon, she joined our trust in 1990. She was instrumental in developing the breast service unit. I remember the words of Mr. Kant at that time, who used to be a breast surgeon, left us. He said, "Listen, Walid, this person is instrumental for the success and future of this unit. So this trust must keep an eye and support that colleague." Excellent surgeon with excellent outcomes. Patient satisfaction feedback outstanding. A number of my relatives were treated by her. And what can I say? Her care is just fabulous. Such a caring person. Held the hand of the patient right from the beginning, when she first saw them, until they had the operation and after, and gave more than 100% of her time and effort. Pushpa was awarded the Oncology Team Award in 2008, was lead of the breast unit for 3 years at very difficult time, and has shown excellent leadership skills, and really had ownership of the service. at such difficult times. Pushpa was also the chair of the Rotherham International Doctors Group. This is a group which is established to help countries in need, particularly healthcare. So whenever there is disaster or needs or pain, then we do our best to help them. And Pushpa was the chairman, and the achievements of her under her leadership and chairmanship was building a school in Burma,